Ah, ja. Servus Freunde, my name is Jimmy Cage. I've reviewed more than 400 indie movies on the channel, but today I want to talk about a book, which only happened once before. Of course, I want to talk about Ponniyin Selvan again. Now it's only a matter of days until the most anticipated new film by Mani Ratnam is coming out, and as you probably know, Dennis and I were just very curious about the original story, the source material that movie is based on, which is Kalki's historical fiction novel that was first serialized in a weekly fashion from 1950 to 1954, and then published in book form in 5 parts in 1955. The original language is of course Tamil, but thankfully there have been English translations as well, and a fairly new one too, translated by the late great Pavitra Srinivasan. A few weeks ago, Dennis and I talked about our experience with the first book Fresh Floods, and if you haven't seen that one, you can check it out here. Unfortunately, the busy Meister wasn't able yet to continue his journey with Kalki's epic, but I just finished the second book Whirlwinds and want to share my overall thoughts with you. This won't be a full-fledged review, more like me sharing my joy and overall impressions with you. First of all, I loved it, which wasn't a surprise to me as I was already super excited about the first book. It has all the charms of the first one and just continue to further explore this awesome tale. As it was originally published on a weekly basis, the transition from book 1 to 2 is really smooth. And yet they found a nice and organic feeling point where to end the first and continue the second book. Fresh Floods introduced us to this world and the many different characters. To our lead protagonist Vandiyadevan, who himself gets introduced to Chola Nadu, as well as all these characters. He's our link to this world, and he's such a lovely and archetypical hero protagonist. He gets himself into all these precarious situations and he always needs to find some kind of ruse to get out of them again and fulfill his mission. And while the first book dealt with that first mission, it ended with a new one, a new assignment, a new plan to head to Ilankai, aka Sri Lanka, to meet the titular character Ponniyin Selvan and bring him a message from his dear sister, the Princess Kundavai. And this is pretty much where we continue with Whirlwinds. The first pages are all about his journey over the sea, and then the majority of the book takes place on Ilankai, with a small but important segment changing the focus to Tanjavur, where we get to know what Nandini and Kundavai are up to. Which is pretty cool because these two are fierce adversaries, and after the first book has laid out their different agendas, they are now meeting in person. But aside from that segment, Whirlwinds really felt like the big Ilankai adventure, the big introduction finally, after so much build up, to our titular character Ponniyin Selvan, or Prince Arulmoli, the younger brother of both Aditya Karikalan and Kundavai Devi. But before we meet him, we are introduced to another new character. While the first book introduced us to one of the most important ones in chapter 2, which was titled Arvakadya Nambi, in this book it's the first chapter that's titled Pungurali. Some people have commented under our first book report that we will meet a most beloved character in the second one. And yes, I can totally see why people love Pungurali so much. And I was so happy that Kalki once again positively surprised me with how wonderful his female characters are. Both Nandini and Kundavai are so strong and fascinating, and now we also have Pungurali, this young, adventurous and seemingly fearless boatwoman who has so much agency and autonomy. She very much comes across as the perfect counterpart to Vandiyadevan, and how these two headstrong characters are clashing heads in the beginning part of the book is just awesome. The whole first 80 pages or so were probably the most fun I had with the entire story so far. Pungurali is almost making Vandiyadevan losing his mind, which is just hilarious. Once again, like in the first book, to think is to act. At least that's what can be read in the English translation time and time again when our hero and now also Pungu are embracing a difficult situation. The way the story unfolds, how the intrigues, interactions and actions of our many wonderful characters are put down in words, it's just so easy and wonderful to read. The English translation is really marvelous, and I can only assume how great it must be in Kalki's original Tamil language. Like the first book, unsurprisingly, this is also a page-turner, a book that you simply don't want to put away but just continue to rush through. It's packed with fun and exciting situations, and the narration is just exhilarating. Dennis and I described Flash Floods as kind of a masala book, and while some might have problems with that term, we don't mean it in a derogatory way at all. Quite the opposite. From where I am in my exploration of this epic, Kalki seems to have found such a great way of telling this tale and putting all kinds of fun ingredients into the mix. It's just exciting to get immersed into this historical world from more than 1000 years ago. To have these lively characters that are based on historical figures, and some that are completely fictional of course, to delve into old customs, travel to foreign places, get sucked into this political intrigue that's told in a way that's both fascinating and easy to grasp, and just to trust Kalki as a storyteller who unfolds his story with so much panache. Intrigues, romance, adventure, action, music and comedy, it's all there. And it's all in the content itself and how it is presented. And with more than 2000 pages altogether, Kalki takes his time to unfold his tale, and at the same time it's actually quite fast paced, or at least it feels fast paced. I love how all the events so far happen over the course of a very narrow window of time, and at the same time Kalki adds to it by some flashbacks, retellings of our characters, or just some background context about battles and rulers from the past. Or very personal stories that further build the legend of these characters, like the origin of Ponniyin Selvan, when he, as a young boy, fell into that river and was saved by a mysterious stranger, a scene that obviously influenced SS Rajamouli for his Bahubali. But it's only halfway through the second book, when Vandiyadevan and Nambi have been teaming up, that they and we as the readers finally meet our titular character Ponniyin Selvan in person. And of course, it's no ordinary meeting, but in best Kalki manner, a pretty fun build-up that also simultaneously reveals a lot about this character. It's so cool how he poses as a Mehaut, how he explored parts of Ilankai in disguise, and then how he enters into a fight with Vandiyadevan before we finally find out that he is really who we assumed he is. And I also really enjoy how I thought more than once that things might be a little bit too far-fetched or without a good enough reason behind it, and then each time Kalki kind of addresses that, either through some other character asking about it or just through description, and makes clear how it exactly worked and why it's totally fine. I also find it fascinating how much Ponniyin Selvan is portrayed as a great person and how little that bothers me. Because usually if someone is presented in a certain super positive way, it can be a bit boring or just too much. But here, again thanks to Kalki's great use of words and ability as a storyteller, it's just so much fun, and that heroic, inspiring nature is nothing but contagious and adventurous. And there's also always an element to it that helps preventing it from becoming too much. Ponniyin Selvan is portrayed as this super benevolent man who can't do any wrong and who is worthy of all the praise in the world, but his actions are also out of the box and not always appreciated by the people around him who have their own ideas of how he should act. Posing as the Mehaut, making his elephant storm through the jungle to escape the clutches of his protectors, planning to give himself up, or starting a fight with Vandiyadevan again. And speaking about Vandiyadevan again, who is still the main protagonist and hero of the story, it's really cool how these two become friends and go through these different dangerous situations on Ilankai together, accompanied by Nambi, Pungu, Patibendra and some others in different constellations as the adventure continues. Whirlwinds also has a pretty spectacular little finale of its own that has something to do with the titular Whirlwinds, and like I said at the beginning, I really like how the second book is almost entirely focusing on the tumultuous things happening on Ilankai, and how it starts with a journey by boat and ends with a very wild life and death situation on the sea. Now I know that there's certainly a lot more to talk about, and there are many elements I haven't even touched on at all, like the wonderful way in which Kalki continues to describe the romantic or admiring feelings of our characters, the way Nambi makes its own mysterious way through all of this, how Kalki continues to talk about religious matters, or how a whole new Buddhist angle is introduced here. But again, this is just my brief way of sharing my passion and excitement for the book with you. Now I can't wait to watch the movie, and if you are wondering if I will continue to read the books, Of course I will. Though I'm not sure yet if I will make more videos about the third, fourth and final book. We will see. Please feel free to share your thoughts and experiences with Ponniyin Selvan in the comments below. You can hit me up on Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd and also on Patreon, simply at TheJimmyCage. And if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up, share, subscribe, whatever you like. And make sure you hit that bell for all I have to tell.